Hey everybody, welcome to Moment of Clarity. Thanks for joining me. Please take a second to click thumbs up on the video and to share it with someone. That would be awesome of you. But basically, I want to get into the G7 summit, which you may have seen just happened. Biden beforehand gave an impassioned speech where he said Russia needs to get their act together on Libya. He meant Syria, but he said Libya multiple times because, you know, who gives a shit? One or the other. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, he also, and I covered it yesterday on this, on Moment of Clarity. He also did an amazing speech where he said that, you know, how can anyone put up with Russia when they're interfering in other countries' elections, which is also amazing. But considering how that's really our pastime, our hobby, our passion, it's really our passion, interfering in other countries' elections and, you know, putting in our puppet governments. But anyway, I want to talk to someone who is there or was there. He's on his way back now. But Jamarl Thomas is a reporter, a host for Sputnik Radio, and he does other great stuff as well. But he's there in that capacity, and he is reporting back from the G7. So here he is. Hey, man.
What's happening? It's the Putin-Biden summit.
Oh, so this isn't the G7.
The G7.
Oh, okay. This is right after the G7.
No. But we can talk about the G7 if you want. I'm at the Putin-Biden summit. So it was, think of it as Biden was basically doing a world tour. So Biden did the G7, and you know, of course, the world leaders were basically like, dude, I know you're going to talk to Vladimir Putin. That was that. Then he come to the Biden-Putin summit. And the wild part about the Biden-Putin summit, the quote or the comment, the paraphrasing that you gave, he basically, so there are a few things. Vladimir Putin took all comers in regards to Wall Street Journal, CNN. Right. I think there was one from Bloomberg, everybody, the works. Biden cherry picks a press corps. And within the cherry pick press corps, there's a cherry pick press corps. And so those are the only people that can ask Biden questions. And so when Biden says stuff like, yeah, Trump supporters murdered a cop, nobody says, what cop was that, Joe Biden?
Yeah, they didn't actually murder a cop.
Yeah, nobody says that. Or when Joe Biden says, like, if the United States went around the country, around the world, undermining democracies in the way that Russia did, we'd lose respect. And people were like, so I'm in the press room, right? And I actively gasp. People look back like, what is he? And I'm looking at many, I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, nobody's going to say anything about it. Like, nobody says anything about that. How does that fly, right? Like, wow. It's not even like ancient history. Like, we're acting as if Juan Guaido is president of Venezuela right now. We knocked out Zelaya from Honduras. Hillary Clinton said they escorted the man under the pajamas, but it wasn't a coup. Bolivia, you have even Lula. Like it's
Aristide, we flew him in a fucking plane and dropped him in Africa.
Right there. And so it's like, how do you say that? And what does the media's like range of intellect, range of curiosity, range of capability to be like, whoa, that's the president. I respect you greatly, sir, but no, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. No, you get moving on to the next question, and what you get anger from is how dare you have a meeting with him and not give him the business. And so it's like they're screaming at Biden. You know, well, when Biden first came out in his speech, Biden took about 5 minutes to give the press what they wanted. If you notice, right, it's like, I told Putin this, and I told Putin this, and I grabbed his nipples really hard. I did all of that for you. However, we're working on peace and stability and everything else. It's the second part where the press lost that. Whoa! It doesn't sound like you gave him the business at all. You didn't punch him in the throat. You didn't. I mean, Putin came out here. He didn't agree to anything.
Yeah.
And so it's like Biden is trapped by what the Democrats trapped Trump in for the last 4 years. And he's trying to extricate himself from that because he realizes, whoa, the thing that happened in Ukraine was radically unpredictable. And the mainstream media drops context. So from the standpoint of the American public and the American media, what the public gets is Russia is doing all of this stuff and everybody else is just standing there. Nobody's doing anything. Russia is just acting and Russia is just responding. Biden knows that's not true. He's not that stupid, right? And in the context of that, he sees, I can't predict what's happening. There's no communication between us in any real terms. And this is a recipe for disaster. The world matters more. And so what do? Both of them come out. Strategic stability. We need to be able to work on things. We don't have to abandon our values in order to work on things that we agree on versus, compete on the things that we don't. And this was echoed by both. They mirrored each other. If you notice towards the end, we have a philosophical responsibility of protecting the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are the major nations. We're part of great states and nations. The killer stuff wasn't there. Soulless, that wasn't there. And when they asked Putin seemed to get the domestic politics, which was, he's like, look, he said, because they said, did you talk about him calling you a killer, soulless killer? And
that was
still conciliatory.
That was our media. That was our media to begin with. When Stephanopoulos was like, "Would you call him a killer?" He basically bullied Biden into going, "Oh yeah, he's a killer."
Yeah, but Biden still said it.
I know. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to let Biden off the hook. I'm just saying, like, it's so hilarious, and our mainstream media tries to set up the entire thing in the kind of propaganda way that so Americans can understand. Like, even going into this, it was like, oh, Putin's not doing anything that America wants, and he won't even admit that he hacked the elections. And it's like, you guys spent 4 years on Russiagate and proved fucking nothing. And yet, apparently, you just want Putin to walk out there and go, yeah, we hacked the election by those 4 Facebook photos we put up.
Right. Yeah, it's really bizarre. It's like, if you were in the room and think about the framing of the workable point of view of an individual to do that, like in the way that CNN did. CNN stands up in the meeting, and CNN, you can look at him. He's like, I'm going to give Putin the business. I'm doing this for America. And I'm gonna give it to him. What about human rights? What about the Ukraine? What about the Russiagate? Like, he's like screaming at Putin, like this rageful. And you think to yourself, like, do you hear what you're saying? Like, you're arguing about human rights when the U.S. has black sites. Like, how do you do that? How do you make that argument when you have Guantanamo Bay or people being shot in the streets, like 1,000 a year by cops, or the thing that took place with the immigrants? Well, we were putting these kids in pens. And yet, he stands there with all the gumption in the world, radically undeserved. What about the body? That's like, it's astonishing, right? Like, it means that from his framing of the world, Russia has the answer for something that America doesn't. How weird is that? As like world leaders and as human beings, that the CNN guy doesn't know American history. Or, at the very least, doesn't have to deal with it in real terms because he's not talking to foreign leaders. And so it's like, and that's the whole thing with Biden. Could Biden have gotten away with saying the stuff that he said if France 24 was there, if RT was there, if I was there? Oh, God. Like, it's hard to get across, right? A reaction in the press room. Because I'm like, I can't believe he's saying that. It's so, like, it's shocking.
But you're like, how polite do I need to be?
Yeah, but it gets across the press. Like, it gets across how warped they are. When you see the meeting between Putin and you see him take all comers, right? And you see Biden and he's like, oh, here's my list. Here's my list. And that list was hostile. That list wasn't even like, we like this. That list was, we don't think you hit him hard enough. We don't think you got him to admit that he did these things. We don't think you got him to admit that he helped Trump, put him over his shoulders, ran him across the shoulder. Like, they wanted him to admit all of the sins.
Well, and the vast majority of them, if not all of them, are just made up by U.S. government propaganda.
Yeah, so, they're propagandistic hit points. Like, right. And so, and even if you want to make an argument that leaders take actions that are, let's say, vicious and everything else, that's all leaders. That's not, you know, oh, Putin is doing something different than Biden is doing. Biden got in office and killed 22 people that he didn't even know were connected with the group. Like, if you read the New York Times, it says Biden kills 22 militants or whatever. And you read like paragraph 7 in the New York Times, it's like, well, we're unclear whether or not these were Iranian illegal.
Yeah.
Well, which one is it? Is he a killer when he does that? And does the media not recognize, like, what's there in their heads? What is the distinction between those things? Like, that's the part that I'm always curious about, right? How does the media?
Well, one is done by the good guys. We're the good guys, Jamarl. Everything we do is positive for the world.
Love and light, freedom of navigation movements. Like, I mean, it's just really, like, I watched it, and it's warped. It's very warped. Like, if you're not ensconced, like, in American media, let's say you're just kind of like floating above like all of the media around the world and stuff like that, when you're engaging that stuff, and you see this press conference, your reality is just can I curse on here? I can curse.
Yeah,
your reality is fucked. Like, it just screws with you. It because you're like, there's no way they believe that, and yet there it is. The American media became a story in this. Like, I think there are two stories. I think the first one is Biden and Putin seem to have reached this kind of kernel, this nanoparticle of reality that they want to build upon. I don't think they have an answer to, okay, how do we work this stuff out? I think they're looking for a basis of starting a relationship, if that makes sense. Meaning the very act of talking allows you to talk. And the very act of that conversation allows you to be able to proceed on things that you can proceed upon.
Well, just real quick, speaking of, before you finish that point, speaking of talking, when Trump met with Putin, it was, oh my God, look at these two villains getting together to hatch their dastardly plans. When Biden speaks to Putin, it's look at strong Biden standing up to Putin, unlike Trump. And it's like, wait, aren't leaders of nations supposed to meet with each other? Like, and yet in one, you're saying it's dastardly. In the other, you're saying it's a confrontation and Biden's not doing anything Putin wants. And then if you actually look at the facts, Trump put more sanctions on Russia than Obama ever did.
Well, it's so that's right. That's flesh out a little bit. I don't think that Western media is looking at Biden as being strong. In fact, I would argue that the questions that they were like throwing at Biden had a point of view associated with it. You were not able to get him to admit his sins. That seems to be their take. I mean, like the screaming at Biden at the end, like, how is this a success when it seems like he didn't admit to anything? Like that nonsense, right?
And then Biden said, Biden said, I didn't say I have confidence. I don't have confidence in anything.
Right. Like, that's what I mean. He has to like continuously like walk it back. He can never, meaning like he goes into discussing like partnerships and everything else. And after Biden is trying to basically explain, look, the world matters more than this politics stuff. But he can't say, we seeded you guys with a lot of nonsense in order to hit Trump. Now we need you to stop doing that. At least for me. But they didn't come across as saying strength. I mean, if anything, they were meh at best. Like, I am uber curious on whether or not Biden is going to be able to maintain his association with the media. Like, because they seem to have a very clear, it's almost as if, from the perspective of the media, if something was in existence, then it should stay in existence. And the fact that it existed legitimizes its existence. So, yeah, we're in problems with Cuba, so that has to stay forever. Or we have an issue with North Korea, so that war between North Korea and South Korea needs to stay there forever. And if Donald Trump tries to end it, then we're going to start leaking material. We're going to scream that Trump is weak. Same thing with Russia. It just seems like any issue around the world has no fix, because from the standpoint of Western media, the United States should be able to dominate. And if we can't dominate in regards to the outcome, then it's not worth it. Very strange. And I think that's what was on display. I don't think they saw Biden as strength. If anything, they just didn't call him weak. There's a difference in those things, though. Like with Trump, they would say, "Oh, you're weak. You're weak. You gave in to America." Well, Biden is like, "Oh, this is our guy. Call our guy weak."
So so you're saying like our media it continues to push this, U.S. and Russia must be borderline
Yes.
at war with each other. That's the only way you can prove yourself is if you're basically on the cusp of nuclear war with Russia. And so is there anything
Well,
that could have
wait. It's beyond that because it also gets into respect. Like if the United States sends a request, Putin brought this up. He was like, most cyber crimes take place in America, then in Canada. Russia's not on the list. That was his point. Then he made the point of saying, we sent the requests, or US sent the requests for multiple times for cyber attacks on the country. We gave you all the information you wanted on the issue. We requested information, you ignored us. That's the difference. It's the US almost assumes that it should have a certain respect and assumes that it should be able to dictate this stuff. I don't quite get why they full well believe that the respect shouldn't be received, like, back and forth. It may be the fall of the Soviet Union where they're just like, we won, you're a conquered country. How dare you come back and, want more? I don't know what it is. There just seems to be this radical disrespect in regards to Russians that did not seem to exist back in the Soviet Union. It's very strange. It's very unsettling. And when these guys are like talking to one, even the way they talk about Putin, even the way they talk about Russians in general, it's like it's undeserving of acknowledgement or respect. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's a world leader with nuclear weapons. Like, get out of here. Get out of here.
Well,
these people are weird, man.
My favorite thing that our media and basically most Americans do is pretend that everybody in Russia is Vladimir Putin. Like if something is done by a Russian, if any kind of, anybody who ever hacked anything is Russian, even if they're not in Russia at the time, they're just Russian. They're a Russian speaker. Konstantin Kalimnik, who was a Russian translator. He's just immediately equivalent to KGB, Putin. And we don't do that with the United States. No one's like, oh, yeah, everyone is Joe Biden right now. Everyone is Donald Trump. Right.
But it's the way that media drops context, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't give you, like, just looking at the press conference for a moment, if you take the press conference as this kind of sandbox of Western media, and in that sandbox, the media didn't seem to know that Trump supporters didn't kill anybody, didn't seem to know that America had coups around the world, didn't seem to know that the narratives that they were pushing, basically this kind of, why aren't we still at war? Why are we still at war? As opposed to kind of questions of, okay, what did you guys talk about? What's the expectations, etc. Bloomberg, that's one of the best questions. Bloomberg News, they asked Putin, they said, yeah, even if you get this stuff done in groups, why do you believe that the United States will follow through? And it's like that's the question,
Yeah.
And the catch is Putin might not believe it at all. In his head, it might be, well, if they don't, nothing changes. If they do, great. See how it goes. And in his head, I think he's like, all right, let's try to be more conciliatory. I get that Biden has his domestic politics. These guys are howler monkeys. I can just look at the media and see what they're saying. And so Biden is going to have to dance between the raindrops. He is going to have to do that. I give Putin the business. No, I tell him what's right. That stuff. By the same token, back channels, talk behind the scenes, working groups, letting ambassadors go. Meaning it seems like, look, regardless of what is overt, there is going to be this attempt at a relationship. And the catch becomes, who are Biden allies that even try to do this kind of bare bones, basic nanoparticle of understanding? Is it the media? Doesn't seem like it. Is it Democrats? No. I mean, the catch is, are they going to hit their guy? And I don't know.
When you were walking around at the press conferences, did you end up speaking to any of these mainstream media guys?
No, because they were, well, no, I had the opportunity to speak to some writers, maybe one or two other reporters. Those were interesting conversations, but they weren't on Biden. It was on, I got into a fight with a woman on the Nagorno-Karabakh. She was like an Armenian reporter, and I was like, you are insane. I can't believe you played that. We got to this big back and forth. It was fantastic. We were sipping like espresso or cappuccino, eating a cookie and a muffin, and we were like going back and forth over the politics. No, I didn't get the chance to talk to one of the mainstream media guys. Those guys were basically rode in with Biden and left with him.
Yeah.
He had his entourage. And so those guys were at the villa or at the press thing, wherever they were hanging out, and they were separated from us. We were not as important.
Yeah, because even our reporters in America apparently can't. The mainstream media reporters can't be near other reporters because they might get asked about the garbage they're doing.
Yeah. I was shocked, honestly, like shocked. I know I cover media all the time, and I get how typically bad they are. But I think it is so dramatic, the difference. Like, you see two politicians. One politician, all right, ask me anything. The other one, cherry-picked, very narrow. Some reporters can ask very specific questions, but American reporters were asking weird, biased questions that seem to lack a third-grade education of history. The foreign reporters, or once you get to Biden, at that point, it becomes Twilight Zone. Like, reality doesn't matter in there. Yeah. And on some level, American media can only deal with American media because they're the only ones who would say stupid stuff like that without pushback. I mean, it's honestly, man, it is weird. Like, it was very weird sitting there watching that conference after watching Putin's speech, because it's like, so wait, you ask him anything, but Biden gets the cherry-picked group, and even within the context of the cherry-picked group, Biden was still basically getting yelled at. I mean, it's very weird. You know, it's funny. Biden and Democrats create a narrative about the Russian bear, the Russian menace, Vladimir Putin doing everything to everywhere. And then he's telling this woman, you don't understand. But he's telling you don't understand for this profound reason of, we created a narrative to attack Trump. That narrative has gone too far and has destroyed the relationship between the two countries in real terms, where respect is not even there. We shared a hand in that, but you guys are still running with that. And that's a problem because the world is at stake. We're two nuclear powers. I could not predict the behavior of what was taking place in the Ukraine. I can't predict the behavior of what's taking place in Syria. There are hypersonic weapons that can get to our shores in a split second. And if there's a mistake, where is your reaction time when those things are going at these fantastic speeds? You don't get it. That's his point to her. There's a larger context, meaning my job, my philosophical job as president, goes beyond your stupid headlines. And while, yeah, I may engage in this domestic politics when I need to, there are times when things matter more. And my responsibility to the world, I don't even think it's just to America, to the world matters more. And one other point, China. He gave a tell. He made the point of saying, look, China wants to be the world's hegemon militarily and economically. And you have a border with them, I think it's 1,500 miles long. It's like, okay, Biden, why are you telling me that? Well, you're telling me that because it's like, hey, maybe we should work together to mitigate China being out the barn. Well, I mean, dude, are you serious? Like, I can imagine how that went over, right? By the same token, look, Putin, I would imagine, is pragmatic. And like any other world leader, is probably hedge bets, but not hedge bets in a way that would ever undermine the relationship between Russia and China, considering America is not a worthy or trustworthy partner. Meaning the relationship between Biden and Putin is going to be based on this kind of pragmatic, nothing changed scenario, with the exception of language, exception of an ability to communicate and understand how these things are acting, with America also trying to mitigate, even in this situation, China. Isn't that fascinating politics? It's astonishing politics. And it's like Biden has to deal with this hostile media, hostile Democratic Party, hostile Republican Fox News Party that is going to scream at him constantly, you're awake, you're giving in.
they're hostile, but they're hostile in a very specific way. They're not going to say,
Yes, they
Biden,
are.
why do you try and call Russia to account on human rights abuses when no one's abusing more human rights than America? Like, they would never be adversarial in that way. They're only adversarial in terms of yelling, "You're too weak against Russia."
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, man,
you're weak. That's what it is.
I really appreciate this. I know you've done 42 interviews over the past couple of days, so I will let you go. But have a great travels, and thanks for taking the time.
Oh man, dude, anytime, man. Thanks. Have a good one, my man.
Thanks. All right, that was Jamarl Thomas. Check out his stuff when you get a chance. He was there at the Biden-Putin summit. Sorry, I titled this G7. I knew that Russia's not in the G7, but I thought Jamarl was at both the G7 and the Biden-Putin summit. But anyway, a lot of information there. But at the end of the day, there's also one more fact that needs to be put out here, which is these are both capitalist countries. When capitalism, as I discussed endlessly, puts profit over all else. So at the end of the day, these are both countries hurtling towards destroying our environment, hurtling towards destruction by climate change, hurtling towards buying up all the fresh water and having billions of climate and environmental refugees around the world. And so there's many countries that are hurtling towards that. It just so happens that the United States is the worst on that front, because we are the most wasteful, that is consuming the most, producing the most to consume, wasting the most, along with our endless militarism, our endless war games. And so we are the most dangerous on that front, but it doesn't mean that Russia too is now not a capitalist country that is also destroying its own environment, right? This socioeconomic system is headed there in other countries as well. So we need to talk about that, and that doesn't get talked about enough. But I think one of the biggest takeaways from this is it was the U.S. doing this bullshit propaganda against Russia, because the U.S. government has no interest in actually having a working relationship with the other biggest countries in the world. The United States is a cornered tiger that is flipping out because we are steadily losing our grasp on the globe, steadily losing hegemony, and you see these ruling elite that are not okay with that. Whereas the adult, rational thing to do would be like, hey, maybe we're one of many countries and we should be one of many countries, rather than we own the world. We get to fuck over everybody else, destroy their countries, steal their resources. Instead, we should be one country out of many, rather than, acting like we own the goddamn place, which of course is destroying the planet quicker than if it were many countries cooperating. So that's why this garbage must continue. And they've put forward this horseshit of Russiagate for going on 5 years now. I guess it's 5 years now, and it will never stop. I mean, they bought into it. They have pushed it on us endlessly. Even though each time you dig a little deeper, all you got to do is just scratch the surface and start digging down a little, and you go, "Oh, you don't have shit." Like, you don't have shit. Really? That Facebook photo is what changed the whole election for Donald Trump? And they're still going on it. And so now your mainstream media, with the exception of Fox News, which is garbage in all the other ways, it takes as an assumption of fact that Russia rigged the election to get Donald Trump into power. And it's like, fucking no. Donald Trump got into power, A, because he was up against one of the most corrupt, horrific candidates that this country's ever seen in Hillary Clinton. And B, because a lot of people believed Donald Trump's bullshit that he was going to stand up to the bankers, to the military-industrial complex, to the people that he claimed owned the country. And a lot of people bought into that bullshit. And, even though he is one of the oligarchs, he's just, a slightly pushed out wing of the oligarchy, a con man among con men. And anyway, they believed his horseshit. So that's why he won, because when you have workers exploited this much, they will turn to whichever guy says, hey, I'm going to stand up to these people exploiting you. So that's why he won, not because Russia did anything. But nowadays, our liberal media takes it as fact that Russia somehow has rigged America, or that the Russian hackers that demanded millions in ransomware, in ransom after putting their ransomware in the pipeline here in the United States, that they must be working at Putin's discretion. Putin is commanding every hacker that's ever lived. It's just idiotic stuff. And I think a lot of Americans don't believe it anymore. But our media is working on that premise. So then when Biden goes to this meeting with Putin, he has to work with that premise. Hey, Putin, admit that you stole the election for Donald Trump, and then I will speak to you we could actually work together. But, there's also the fact that Joe Biden has been, a corrupt, pathetic senator for his entire career. And now he doesn't even know the words. He doesn't remember the word. Here's the thing. We all age, all right? At some point, I will be as old as Joe Biden, and I may be as senile as Joe Biden. So this is not about, how stupid of him to age. Like, we're all going to get there one day. But the difference is he's trying to pretend it's not happening, and he's running the country. So that's why it's a problem. And so when he gets up there and gives a 3-minute speech about how he's going to hold Putin to account on Libya, and through the whole thing he means Syria, it's a problem. You want that guy with the button with the button in his control? He's got the red button in front of him. Which country we bombing? I don't know. He said to bomb Egypt. I don't think he meant Egypt. I think he would do whatever he said. He's got the button, but he doesn't. He said Kajuja. He said bomb the capital of Kajuja. That's not a country. He just made up sounds. Then bomb something, because he's in charge. Just bomb something and tell him that yes, you hit Kajuja. Tell him that. I don't know. I don't know what he meant. Is that the guy who's confusing countries? That's the guy who was in charge of the button. But yeah, this fucking, they should give him a fake button. They should give him the Staples help button. Is that what it was? The Staples used to have the ad with the big red button you push for help or something. They should give him that button. Tell him that's the button. And it does not connect to anything. Just give him a button that's not connected to anything and be like, that's it. That's the one. You're in charge now. Yeah, Grandpa. You push that button anytime you get angry. You just push that and this shit'll go down. Just give him a fake button. Don't plug it in. I mean, they should have done the same with Trump. They should do the same with all presidents, because they're all fucking psychopaths. That's how they get there. They've been approved as a psychopath as they go forward in their careers, and then the business community looks back and forth and goes, it's pretty clear he's a psychopath. So let's get that guy in there. Let's give him millions of dollars. Make sure he gets in the office, because he'll do what we want. All right, guys, that's the episode. Thanks for joining me. If you donated, all the donations are going to people who are struggling. We talk more about that on the weekend live streams. And text the word redacted to 33777 to get signed up to the free email list. Check out my podcast, Government Secrets and Common Censored. And check out every new episode of Redacted tonight. Keep fighting.